everyone, Maria Young here, and I thank you guys so much for tuning in to yet another orchid adventure. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is oddball experiences and orchid oddities, things that orchids don't normally do. Well, one thing I have to tell you folks is that orchids have their own little personalities. They definitely have their own mind, and they will actually do whatever they want to do. So just because you may have an orchid that's really doing something fluky and crazy out of the norm and kind of a freak of nature-ish kind of thing, know that it doesn't mean something's wrong with your orchid. It just means it's an orchid. And again, it does what it wants to do. So I'm going to use a couple of people that are also fellow YouTubers that have had some very strange experiences with their orchids. One, of course, is Holy City, also known as Brittany. And she actually has a monster cattleya that blooms in 3 different types of ways. That's right, it's one cattleya, one plant. But again, it blooms in 3 ways. One way, of course, is in a green sheath. Another way is in a brown sheath. And yet another way is actually without a sheath at all. So does that mean that there's something wrong with our orchid? Not at all, folks. It's absolutely normal because, again, it does what it wants to do. Okay, now there's another individual that was also talking about something that was very odd about one of her orchids. And she was actually flasking her vandas. And they were baby vandas or seedlings coming straight from a flask. And she did notice that one of her seedlings actually had a baby coming right off of it. So it was a seedling vanda with a keiki. How unusual is that? Quite unusual, but guess what again? It's an orchid. It does what it wants to do. Okay, folks, so today I have 3 examples for you of oddball things that orchids can do. One is, of course, my Paphiopedilum. Another example would be my Chysis. And yet another example is this Kingianum. Okay, so let's start with this Kingianum orchid right here. Now, as you guys know, your orchids can either grow a keiki or blossoms. And a lot of times we're confused because we don't know which one they'll bloom. They kind of sort of look the same way when they start out. Sometimes your orchids can actually act a little bit crazy and decide that they want to do both. That's right, they can give you some blossoms and at the same time give you a new growth as well. So you can have a keiki and a blossom all in one. Okay, so this is how this is going to work. After it's bloomed, which you can see that it's really fading out now, it will begin to produce its roots. And as you can see, this is quite a stubby, plump little fella. And what's going to happen here, because you don't see any foliage or new growth coming out other than the roots, but what'll eventually happen is the foliage will also grow from the base as well. And as soon as it gets big enough, all you have to do is plant it. Yes, it is quite an oddball thing, but you know what? I won't complain because I love to get blossoms and a new plant at the same time. So definitely a wanted oddball thing. And next on our list is this Chysis laevis orchid. Now this Chysis actually acts much like the Catasetum in the way that it grows its bulbs, and also in the balding process where it will lose all of its foliage and of course have its blossoms that will grow from the base. So this growth process is much the same way. Now when I bought this Chysis, I actually asked the owner of the nursery if this was capable of producing its blossoms this year. And she actually stated that no, it was not. It actually has to get much larger than this. So in actual reality, I more than likely would not have blossom until next season, which I didn't mind because of course this orchid right here is very pretty, and I love the foliage, so indeed didn't mind it at all. Now, folks, here's where it gets a little freaky. Okay, so you guys see this new growth, and there's actually two of them. Two new growths on this plant. So of course I was delighted. Of course, it means that this is going to grow healthier, have two more suitables, and of course more blossoms. So who could complain about that? Not me. Well, here's the funny thing about this new growth. Dun-na-na-na. Okay, so we have some very cute new growth right here. Quite adorable, wouldn't you say? Now, if we go down, what is it that you see right there, folks? Coming right out of this new growth right here? Yes, that's right. You guys see it. This is actually a bud that's going to bloom. Now, how crazy is that? This is a baby keiki that's actually coming off the cane. And as you see here, it's a keiki that has a blossom. How awesome is that, folks? Too awesome! So again, there you have it, folks. They absolutely do what they want to do. They're such rebels, but I love it. Okay, folks, and this is going to be our last example right here. This is my Paphiopedilum, which I'm very delighted about because, as you can see, it has two blossoms that are coming, folks, and also another one right here. And if you take a closer look, folks, there's so many fans and new growth in here. I actually counted, I think, about 9 of them. So definitely a healthy plant. Now, what's so odd about this, you ask? I will tell you. Okay, folks, before I show you the freak of nature of this plant, I want to show you first how this plant will grow its actual blossom on its spike that actually kind of has a hook shape. Okay, so keep that in mind, okay, folks? A hook shape. Okay, so we talked about this plant having lots and lots of new growth, and there's actually a tiny new growth here that if we can take a closer look, you will actually see a hook shape that is coming out of this tiny new growth right here. You see that hook shape? So all that I can conclude with this is that this little tiny new growth, that's how tiny it is actually trying to grow a blossom. How awesome, awesome, awesome is that, folks? Now, I'm not quite sure if this is actually big enough, because definitely you wouldn't think it's mature enough, but it's doing it, folks. So we'll see if this actually will come into a bloom. A teeny tiny bloom, I would imagine. But yeah, just another oddity, folks. Okay, folks, so there you have it. These freaks of nature. But I would much rather call it work of art. Indeed. You just gotta love them. I thank you guys for tuning in to yet another episode of Orchid Adventures. And if you guys like this video, please be sure to give it 2 thumbs up. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please be sure to post them as well. As you guys know, I love to hear from you guys. And if you haven't subscribed already and want to see more of the latest and greatest news coming straight from my orchid world, please be sure to subscribe. If you guys have also experienced some oddities about your orchids, please be sure to let me know about them. Sure would love to hear about your oddball oddities. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and please stay tuned for more.